Hello everyone, I'm Arilax, and this week I'm going to be playing with one of the more interesting decks to come out of Battle for Zendikar in Modern, and that is Bring to Light Scapeshift. So the Scapeshift deck has always been a thing. You cast Scapeshift with 7, 8 lanes in play, you get Mountains and a Valakut or 2, and deal 18 to 36 damage to your opponent. Pretty straightforward. Um, you just have a bunch of ramps so you can kill faster, some counter magic, so you're effectively a control deck in the combo mirrors, smattering of spot removal, and they die. Um, Historically, this deck has had two issues. The first is that it's very card count dependent. You do need, 7 or 8 lands in play and escape shift. Um, so that's a lot of cards to kill them. And the other problem is that you only have 4 escape shifts. So sometimes if one gets discarded, you're left digging for them. One of those problems has been solved because you can bring to light. That gives you an effective 7 scape shifts without having to draw the disaster double scape shift draws where you have a brick in your hand, which is terrible. Um, and it's made the deck a little bit better. Worth noting, the other thing Battle for Zendikar has brought is Cinderglade, um, which lets this deck play less basic mountains that don't tap for green mana. It ends up putting a lot of basics into play anyway, so this is untapped a fair amount, and you still get to play your 10 mountains anyways. Pretty sweet, pretty minor though. So going through the deck, we've got traditional, search set. This is a list by Pabu Boy on Magic Online. I originally saw this deck played by CJ Steele, who goes by FNM World Champion on Twitter and Magic Online, who shared his list with me about a month ago when I lost to him playing. Oh, I don't even remember what I was playing at the time. But I got crushed by him, and the deck looks sweet. And since then, Jeff Hoogland played it at the Open in Dallas last weekend. So it's getting a little bit of traction. And Scapeshift is definitely a deck that picks up its fair share of wins from time to time. So I want to try it out. So you've got the 7 kill cards, 4 Bring to Light, 3 Scapeshift. Bring to Light's an actual spell if you draw multiples. Scapeshift is not. Bunch of ramp. Hunting Wilds, it's kind of a weird card. You're like, what is this card doing? And then you realize it's just the best thing to ramp because you can ramp into dual lands with it. You can get breeding pools and stomping grounds if you need to ramp into non-basics because you don't have enough forests or islands left in your deck. And you can cast Bring to Light and find it, which is great. And it randomly wins you games in a weird way. So yeah, this card is a pretty cool find. We've got a generic sweeper to find with Bring to Light, Anger of the Gods in this case. Past lists have played Damnation or Wrath of God. I don't know what the right play is. Those require an extra dual land of that color to really rely on, which I don't know if there actually is room for. We have Lightning Bolt, which is a card I'm generally pretty soft on in Scapeshift. Not really really excited to play it because it puts you down a card in your I need to replace cards combo deck. But I'm willing to try it. It's possible that with Bring to Light for Hunting Wilds, you can make up some of that card disadvantage pretty easily. 4 Cryptic, 4 Remands, default, extra counter and Dispel. Pretty good right now with all the Grixis Nutsus floating around. Anticipate, another relatively big recent addition to the deck. It played Telling Time in the past, so Anticipate's just better. And 1 Snapcaster Mage. You're down on this card a bit because you no longer need to flashback Scapeshift as much. It is kind of clunky, but it does provide value. Worth noting on the mana, you have a Swamp to find with Search for Tomorrow, and a Watery Grave to fetch up or Farseek for Bring to Light. Those are your sources. There's still Flutter Grove in the deck. Card's fine. Looking at the sideboard, because there's really not a lot going on in the main besides just the big categories of what this deck does. It's just, draw some cards, play Escape Shift after ramping. You do notably get to see, I get to play like a Crumble to Dust, a Slaughter Games, a Glenalandra Archmage, and get a lot more out of a Creeping Corrosion, and get a lot more out of them because of Bring to Light. There's a bunch of Balos you can't lose to burn. This card is kind of needed against Jund. Some Spell Skites, because this card just interacts with a lot of combo decks and slows them down a little bit, like Amulet. Revelry over Nature's Claim. The life is actually important, especially because Affinity is a deck that's notorious against Scapeshift for staying at 19 or 20 life, which So the math is such that if you have 7 lands in play, Scape Shift does 18 damage, and Affinity is really good at making you need that extra land, which is an extra turn, which usually costs you the game against them. So this card kind of breaks that symmetry, or that, not symmetry, that interaction up quite well. A split of counter spells, so you can be proactive in answering their counter or have the most efficient. Another anger to mop up the board against the decks that you want anger against. I could see that being something else just because Bring the Light, but realistically, anger is the most powerful card against a lot of the decks that you need to anger the gods because they have like nonsense like Kitchen Finks against the Anafenza Collected Company, Viscera Kitchen Finks, Abzan Company deck or whatever. So I like this deck. It's probably not in the best spot with the resurgence of Zoo at the Open, but I'd like to actually just get some games in and see how it goes tonight because it looks really interesting and potentially very powerful. Because Bring the Light gives you so much flexibility in a deck that can actually, pay 5 mana and cast it.